Hello, and welcome back to a very special episode of Inside Picard, Episode 6, from the creators of Warped, the completely unnecessary Star Trek podcast. My name is Matt.
I'm Shawn.
And I'm Min Win.
How's it going, everybody? How you doing, Shawn? Yeah.
I'm well. I was intense episode I watched last night.
Okay, you watched it last night. I watched it last night, and then I watched it again today.
Jeez. Way to nerd up someone.
Well, here's the thing. I like to watch it once just to watch it for my own personal, enjoyment. And then I watch it again to take notes, because I don't want to take notes the first time that I'm watching it, because I want to experience it, So I try to watch every episode twice. Don't judge me. How dare
you? I'm impressed, actually. There was no judging.
And we are watching episode 6 of Star Trek Picard. It is called The Impossible Box, which I know kind of made me laugh a little bit.
It's got a little bit of a connotation to it.
Got a little bit of a subtext. I don't know, maybe. Written by Nick Zayas and directed by, I don't know if it's Maja or Maja Vervilo.
Yep.
Directed this one.
Yeah. The Impossible Box could also refer to the Borg cube, couldn't it?
It certainly could, and you will learn what that refers to.
They're actually referring to a very specific box.
A very specific thing in the episode.
Gotcha.
So let's dive right in. Min, how does every episode of this show start?
Flashback.
Or
orgy. No, or there's an or. I thought there was only one.
Well, most of them have been flashbacks. The first episode was.
You have to remember back to
dreams.
Dreams or flashbacks. That's how this show starts.
Yes.
This show starts with a dream that is also a flashback.
Sort of, yeah. Where it's it's Soji's dream. So, what is it? It's a robot dream.
So we see little baby Soji. She's like 6 or 7, maybe, she looks like. And she's walking through a hallway. It's raining outside. It's storming outside. She goes into a room, and the room is full of plants, and there's a big row of orchids in the room. It looks like a botanist's laboratory.
There's a
maybe.
Man in a lab coat behind all the orchids. You can't see him. He's turned his back to us, and she says, "Daddy."
And then you hear somebody yelling like, "Soji, get out of there."
Watching in, and then you hear Soji, and then she wakes up.
She wakes up. Presume that Daddy is Maddox, Bruce Maddox.
Not
necessarily. Okay.
No. At this point, we don't know what that is.
How we talked about the mom being an AI program. I get the feeling that the dad is sort of a similar thing,
right?
A created memory. In the end, part of this episode is learning that all of her memories are bogus, and she has not been around that long.
Which we basically already knew. Like, this is one of the problems I had with this episode and with Soji's plotline in general, is that it's hard to care about her learning these things that we as an audience already know.
Right.
Like, we already know Soji's whole deal. So watching her learn that, there's like no sort of dramatic tension to that, because we already, as viewers, we already know her deal. It's one of my complaints about this episode and Soji's sort of storyline in general. I think all the stuff with Soji and Narek is super boring.
Well, and like you say, they play it like the whole sequence is played like a twist moment.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I mean, we can get into it eventually. This is sort of later on, but there's a scene.
We're skipping ahead, but that's okay.
We're skipping ahead. There's a scene, man. She's figured out that something's not right.
Yeah.
And she starts scanning all of her possessions.
Oh, no, don't do that. Skip that. Don't do that's way skipping.
Okay. Well, anyways, my point is the scene is played like it's a big reveal.
Like there's some big mystery.
But it's only a big reveal to her.
To her.
We already know all of these things.
And so does everybody else. Like Narek already knows what she is.
Right.
You know, everybody knows what she is except her.
Except her.
So it's kind of boring watching her like put the pieces together and sort of figure out her deal. That was I was a little bit disappointed by this episode, especially compared to the last two, which were both a lot of fun. This one is, except for a few moments, which we'll definitely talk about, there is a lot of just watching Soji figure shit out that we already know.
And Narek being just sort of an evil prick.
So she wakes up from her dream, Min, and she's in bed with Narek again. This is surprising a little bit.
Narek again?
Narek is the Romulan who she's been having sex with, who's on the board ship.
Gotcha.
And he's there to sort of like learn stuff about her, right?
Well, they showed, we didn't talk about it in the episode, but in episode 4, him and his sister have a conversation where they explain why they're trying to get through, so why they haven't just killed Soji. Right. They're trying to find out
information out of
where she's from, so that they can go there and kill all of the cybernetic.
They think that there are more Sojis out there, or more.
So they know her true nature
out there. Yes, they all know. Everybody does, but her. It's a real, like, it's one of those movies where everybody's in on it except the one dumb character. Sure. It's like Shutter Island. Did you ever see Shutter Island?
No.
Okay.
Like Truman Show.
Yes, perfect. Great. Truman Show. Exactly so. So she wakes up, she's in bed with Narek. It was a little surprising to see her in bed with Narek because the last time we saw Soji and Narek was in episode 4 because they were not in episode 5. And in that episode they had a big fight and she kind of stomped off. But Soji continues to make bad choices in whom she chooses to sleep with and trust. Because here they are back in bed together, even though she was mad at him the last time we saw them. So they have this little conversation about, she says, I'm having bad dreams. He tells her, was it a dream or was it a memory? And she's like, I don't know. I couldn't tell. And he's like, why don't you talk to your mom? You talk to your mom every day. And she's like, how do you know that? Because, of course, he knows everything about her and she seemingly does not care because, again, she keeps having sex with him. He's like, I hear things. I know all about you. And she's like, well, maybe if you talk to your mom, she'll be able to tell you a little something about what this dream that you're having or this memory that you're having. And she's like, you never tell me anything. I don't even know your real name. I don't know what your job here on the ship is. And he's like, that's right, you don't. And then he just walks out. Like, he's so real.
Well, he does. There's this whole thing where she says, what's your real name? He's like, well, my name's Narek. He's all, no, I know Romulans. They have a real name. They have a name they tell everybody else. And then they have a name for their family and friends. And then in the end, he's like, just sort of like gets pissed off, starts to walk out, and she's like, Narek, and he's like, that's not my name.
I don't know,
and walks out of the room.
Narek is an expert negger. Like he would be. Yes. He would be like, what's that guy who wrote that book about how to
the pickup artist?
Yeah, that guy. He's great at it. Because he just tells her shit and then walks away and leaves her hanging.
And it really throws her off.
Yeah. So then we cut to up on the ship, up on the La Serena, and Dr. Girardi, who you'll recall, Min, killed Bruce Maddox at the end of episode 5.
She's explaining to Picard.
She's lying to Picard and telling him Bruce Maddox's injuries were too severe. There was nothing we could do to save him. And Picard buys it. Hook, line, and sinker.
Wow.
He's like, I'm sure you did whatever.
This must be so hard for you. And he totally buys it.
So she lies to Picard about why
she gets away with it.
She does. For now. I'm assuming the truth will come out at some point.
Sure.
Wouldn't want to check the tapes. I'm sure they're tapes.
Right.
Yeah, or ask
about
the
the
hologram.
In the
Like,
what happened?
he was there.
No,
Maybe it has there's some sort of HIPAA regulation where the hologram can't reveal anything unless, I don't know.
I mean, to be fair to Picard, he has no reason not to trust her. She's been seemingly completely upfront with him all along, and Bruce Maddox was pretty fucked up. I mean, there's no denying it. So,
and it's not like she choked him; she just turned off the machine, right?
Yeah, she just turned off the life support or whatever. So anyway, Elnor comes in, good, sweet, adorable. Sexy. Elnor's great.
Yeah,
he was the best part of the episode.
What they've decided to do with Elnor is give him a sort of fish out of water persona, because he's never been away from the Romulan nuns before.
Yeah.
So he's constantly sort of commenting on what's going on because he never understands quite what's happening.
But you have to imagine that they write him with a female or a feminist perspective because he was raised by a bunch of women, correct?
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, they haven't really...
It's not
explored that. No. It's more like he's just awkward socially because he's never interacted with other people other than the Romulans on his planet before. So he's sort of learning as he goes. So he comes in and he's talking to them, and he said something. Should I off butt? Because they've been telling him to. Or should I out butt?
Out
because
butt.
they've told him. You can tell that they've told him to butt out. So he's like, should I out butt? And they're like, no, you can stay. It's for this conversation.
They've shifted the comic relief from Jurati to Elnor.
Yeah, because they've given Jurati this sort of secret darkness.
Yeah, she killed someone. You can't laugh with her now.
Exactly.
It would be weird for her to go back to being
sort of goofy. They start talking about going to the artifact.
Yes.
The Borg cube.
Yes. They continually refer to it as the artifact. It's clear that everybody knows what it is. This is not...
Elnor doesn't know what it is.
Well, he doesn't know anything. But yes. And
is there only one Borg cube?
No.
There's lots of Borg cubes, but there's only this one that has been captured and taken over by Romulans, right?
Gotcha.
So they're talking about going to the Borg cube, and Elnor's like, Borg, 7 of 9? And Picard's like, no, not 7 of 9. Much worse. And Elnor's like, you don't look like you're happy that we're going there. And Picard's like, I am not happy about going there because the last time I was there, the last time I had to go to a Borg ship, I got turned into a Borg. And I
didn't go there willingly, and I was turned into a Borg, and it took.
This whole episode is Picard PTSD. Picard is still suffering, even though he's kind of dealt with his PTSD in Star Trek: First Contact. They're sort of reviving it. He's still got unresolved Borg feelings that he has to take care of. And so Picard's
and as we go through the episode, you see that that's a fairly common feeling amongst all ex-Borg.
Yeah, sure.
Ex-Bs, as they call themselves.
It's a real traumatizing thing to get turned into a Borg.
Well, he makes a great point about it we can get to it when we meet Hugh. He makes a great point about that the Borg aren't monsters; they're victims.
That's his big sort of revelation. Boy, for somebody who's obsessed with doing things in the right order, you are jumping all over the place today.
Right, Matt?
Do you care about going in the right order still?
You were talking about specific points. I was just going with the flow of the conversation.
I literally sat there and wrote down the order of the scenes so as not to offend your delicate sensibilities.
I have not been complaining about this for at least 3 episodes.
Well, the other...
it's a common theme.
I haven't said a thing about order in the last couple of episodes.
Fine. So anyway, Picard's like, I'm still traumatized by having been Borgified, and I'm not looking forward to having to go there. And Elnor's like, well, maybe they've changed, and Picard's like, Borg don't change, Borg assimilate, Borg destroy, Borg
they must
Borg, Borg, and then he like stomps off angry, and then Elnor and Jurati are sort of left there after Picard leaves, and Elnor looks at Jurati and he says something like, he doesn't know that you've got a secret too, or you have something traumatic.
You're haunted too, yeah.
And then he's like, "Am I in-butting?" And she's like, "Yeah, that time you were definitely in-butting because shit's none of your business."
Yeah. And then we know that Elnor has a dark secret.
No, Elnor tells her. Picard doesn't.
Picard doesn't know
you, Jurati, are haunted by something.
Gotcha.
And then we get the opening credits.
No.
Yeah.
Then you get
Yes.
Picard in his
you're
office.
right. Sorry, you're right.
Picard goes to the holodeck.
I jumped to number 5 on my list. I missed number 4.
The holodeck. You know how he has his office in the holodeck, right?
Yes. His vineyard.
His den at the vineyard. So he goes there and he turns on the computer. And he asks it to check everything having to do with the artifact, the treaty, and the Borg. And it starts pulling up pictures of the Borg. And
it's basically an Instagram feed. Like, it's just nothing but it's just photographs.
And he comes across a picture of you.
He's literally swiping through like you would on your phone these photographs. And he sees a picture of Hugh. And he's like, oh, there's Hugh.
When he was a Borg when they caught him originally.
Yeah.
And then he keeps flipping and eventually he gets to a picture of Locutus.
Yes.
And there's this really cool shot of him looking at he's looking at the camera through the holographic picture of him as Locutus, and it's sort of lined up so that it looks like
it overlaps.
Locutus overlaps over on top of him. It's a really cool shot.
Yeah.
It's a Photoshop layer, you might say.
Yeah.
It looks like he's been layered over.
Well, as a professional artist and graphic designer, I would totally understand that.
Yeah, I would think you would. I mean, you wouldn't know it to look at that sketch.
I did my best in 5 minutes, Matt. Also, my traditional.
You didn't have to do it. I didn't
take a little more time, bro.
I didn't know you were doing it. Did you do it while we were talking?
No. I did it later.
Okay. So you made no effort.
I made some effort. I'm a busy man. I've got a heavy load of editing.
You got all these people coming to the store at 7 o'clock.
A lot of people at the store on Friday night, it seems like.
Yeah, I have to turn them away. I don't work here anymore. I don't know what you want.
This place is closed.
Yeah, permanently.
I would have buy $10,000 worth of computers. We're closed.
It's closed.
Get out.
I'm recording.
Go buy your computer equipment at Best Buy
right now.
Get out of my face.
Go to Amazon for your computer needs.
Yeah, my brother tomorrow is like, why is our store been TP'd?
There are all these Yelp reviews saying they came by the store and were told it was closed. 2 stars.
Yeah. Sorry, where were we?
Then we're at the credits.
Credits. Wow. That's a lot happening before the credits.
It was a fairly large cold open.
It was a long cold open. It was like 10, 12 minutes, something like that.
Jeez, does Jurati got to kill Elnor now? Oof.
There is no way in hell Jurati could possibly kill.
Oh, right.
No.
Elnor slices people's heads off at the drop of a hat.
Without question.
He will drop your hat for you by slicing your head off so that the hat also falls to the ground.
I looked up pictures of Elnor, and you're right, man. He is like a sizzling piece of beef there.
He's got like fella.
Very statuesque, very structured.
Did you see pictures of him out of the outfit, like his regular, like his just normal photographs of him?
Oh yeah, just as a regular person. Yeah. He's a good-looking guy. Mm-hmm. I like how they make him up for Star Trek, though. He's very Lord of the Rings. He's a little elfy.
Very Legolas.
Dark side of Legolas.
Absolutely.
Sure.
He's Legolas with a dark haircut.
With the dark black hair. Yeah.
I cannot wait for the cross of Star Trek and Lord of the Rings, the fan fiction there.
I guarantee you someone has already written
I want it.
Elnor Legolas fanfic.
I want to see the artwork.
I will Google it. And I'm sure I'm right. Someone has already done that.
I'm so excited.
Probably before the show even started.
Oof.
Just based on the photograph.
Yeah, they're fucking hot. Oof.
So anyway, we come back from the opening credits.
And we get a topless person.
We finally get some skin on this show.
Guy,
we were just talking in one of the earlier episodes about how this is not a skin showy kind of show.
Yeah.
And not even the men take their shirts off. But here we get Captain Rios, who we did see shirtless once before, but he had a big chunk of metal sticking out of his shoulder at the time, so it wasn't kind of sexy. It was more like gross. But here he is with his shirt off, playing soccer with himself, bouncing a soccer ball.
It's a scene. I think
I don't know what to call it, but you know how people kick a soccer ball?
Yeah, he was juggling with soccer
keep
ball.
It from hitting the ground. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Is that what it's called? Juggling? I think it's juggling. I think
it's called juggling. That's what it's called.
Arms. I feel like there should be another word for when it's your feet.
Yeah.
There you go. There's question number 4.
It should be fuggling because
oh, gee. Fuggling sounds like something a juggalo does to you in a very bad situation.
It was a scene that one day when I watched this show with my wife, she's going to be very engaged in that scene.
Is Captain Rios
a woman who likes
well-built man?
And hot man. Yeah.
He's sort of I think he's a handsome man.
He's super handsome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's
older,
but swarthy. Yeah, he's like a swarthy Spaniard.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's a swarthy Spaniard in real life, but that's who he's playing on this show.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Sort of an Antonio Banderas-y type.
Yeah.
From the young days.
So anyway, he's bouncing his soccer ball around. Yeah, from the young days. So Antonio Banderas is 60 years old now. Man.
He still looks good.
He looks great. I'm just saying. I'm not old. Shaming Antonio Banderas.
40-year-old Antonio Banderas.
Rise of Zorro.
There you go.
So he's bouncing his soccer ball around, exercising essentially, and Dr. Girardi comes in. And he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry. Was I making too much noise? Was I keeping you awake?" And she's like, "No, I couldn't sleep." And they have a little conversation about space. She's like, "Why do you like it out here? It's so
lonely,
scary, and everything in space is trying to kill you." And he's like, "I like it out here because I forget what he says, but he likes it out here." And then is this when they make out, or is that later?
They kiss. Yeah. No, that's they start making out.
Yeah, kind of out of nowhere. They're just having this conversation, and they're standing very close to each other, but they're not. She just kind of leans in and grabs him and starts making out with him.
Well, after a murder, of a dear close one to you, your emotions are all broiling. You just hard to handle.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think that's exactly what you're supposed to get, because she says to him, "This is a bad idea."
She's like, "I have a superpower, and it's the ability to know mistakes while I'm making them."
I have that superpower too.
That's not a superpower. So that's that.
It's more like a super villain power. It's what you would use if you were a baddie.
And he's like, "No, it's okay," because she sort of pulls away from, because they kiss, and she says, "I've never slept with the captain of anything before." And he says, "Well, I suggest you try it.
I would recommend it," or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. And then he starts to walk, and she sort of pulls away, and he's like, that's when they do that. And she's like, and he's like, "Well, tell me what you're feeling." She's like, "Alone and scared and da-da-da-da-da." And then she goes and kisses him again. And then he says, "This isn't going to fix things." She's like, "Nah, I don't really care." And then they walk off to go.
She says maybe for a few hours it will.
Oh, yeah, maybe even if it's just for a few hours, that's worth it or whatever, yeah.
which I thought, well, that's a long fuck session.
She's expecting a lot out of Captain Rios.
She's really like she hopes that Captain Rios has a lot of stamina. Apparently,
you think Captain Rios has a sex hologram thing that he uses as a replacement for himself?
Captain Rios does not need a sex hologram. How dare you?
Just for variety, for interest.
I'm just saying, like he taps out for a second, let the hologram do some
hologram take over.
Threesome.
There you go.
Yeah, I could see it for sure.
Yeah, you could have like multiple Rioses all in the room at once.
We've taken this from totally family friendly to not family friendly at all.
This is again the like dangers of the holodeck or the
right.
The power of hologram / holodeck technology will, if it ever comes to exist, inevitably be used for sex stuff.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, they hint at it a bit in Next Generation. They blatantly state it in Deep
Space Nine. They make it.
They talk about cleaning the holodecks all the time at Quark's bar.
Yeah, like, Quark makes Rom do the
go squeegee the holodeck after they were in there.
Oh my god,
the Holo Suites.
Holo Suites, yeah, that's what they're called there.
I'm glad they tackle that.
I mean, they do it in a very PG way. Yeah, they definitely let you know what's going on in the Holo Suite. So anyway, Dr. Jurati and Rios have sex.
So they go bang.
Wow. And so we cut back to the Borg cube, and we get a scene with Narek and his sister, whose name I cannot.
Rizzo.
Oh yeah, her name is Rizzo. How could I forget that her name is Rizzo?
I only remember it because
Grace
shit in the first episode.
I can't believe I forgot that her name is Rizzo. It's amazing that the show has a Raffi and a Rizzo. I mean, that's just kind of bad writing. Like, I can remember taking a screenwriting class in college, and one of the like tips they gave you was like, give all of your characters different names so that the audience is not confused about which Doug you're talking about or whatever.
But think to our D&D games and also our Cthulhu games. Oh my gosh.
It's hard to keep track of a lot of different names.
Yeah.
So anyway, Narek and Rizzo are on the Borg cube. Rizzo has it's sort of a combination of a Rubik's Cube and the thing from Hellraiser. It's like a little box, right?
The impossible box.
The titular impossible box.
The titular impossible. I like that word. Titular. That's an excellent Scrabble word. Titular.
Titular.
So she's got this little box, and he grabs it away from her and says, "Don't mess with that. You're gonna break it." She's like, "I don't even know why you even play with that thing. It's like a childhood toy, right? It's a Rubik's Cube." And he's like, "It helps me to think. It's, it helps me like focus my thoughts or whatever." He tells the sister's like, "What's going on with Soji? Like, I gave you a week to get your shit together. You still haven't found out where she's from." And he's like, "I'm working on it. She's having these weird dreams, and I think that the weird dreams mean something." And she's like, "Why would you think that?" And he's like, "Because she's a robot, and robots don't have dreams, which means there's something happening in her programming that is causing her to have these dreams." And the sister's like, "Well, it's a bug or something. She's like malfunctioning." And he's like, "No, it's not that. I think it's that she's starting to figure out who she really is, and the dreams are like her programming trying to reconcile the reality that she knows with the evidence that she's now being confronted, or something like that."
Well, he basically says that he thinks that her unconscious, that as a robot, she's got a subconscious or an unconscious, knows that she's a robot. And that the dreams are trying to reconcile that in her, why does she think, where does this feeling of being a robot come from when all of her conscious thoughts are that she's a human?
Yeah. Right. So he's like, give me a little more time with her. I think I'm getting somewhere. We'll figure out where the homeworld is. And she's like, okay, you can just keep fumbling around with her.
Doesn't she say like 24 hours or 48 hours? She gives him a time.
It doesn't really matter because this all gets resolved by the end of this episode.
Right.
Spoiler alert, man. This is all about to be resolved. And again, this is more of this boring stuff where we already know what's
they're telling us things we already know.
There's no dramatic tension in this scene. We already know that Narek and Rizzo don't like each other. We already know that she's having these dreams because she's trying to learn something about who she is. So this scene only exists to set up the box because the box comes back into play later in the episode. Nothing interesting is happening in this scene. It's just two people saying things we've heard them say. So that's why this sort of episode fell a little bit flat for me. There are a lot of scenes like this where we learn things we already know. Agree? Did you agree with that?
I agree. Yeah. I mean, they do. I mean, like you say, it's new information, but new information that just points to something we already know.
Yeah.
It's showing you new ways of telling you, but it's really just telling you the exact same thing. She's a robot. She doesn't know she's a robot.
And she's about to figure it out. Right. Like we knew all of that already.
She's realized that something's wacky is going on.
Her mom AI, is it ever explained if her mom AI is within her consciousness or subconsciousness, something that she goes to in the holodeck?
She
that.
Hold that in a couple scenes because she makes actual calls to her mother.
Yeah, we see her on the phone with her mother. And we saw Daj on the phone with her mother way back in episode 1 when Daj was on the run. So we know that there's some record of those calls because that's how they were able to track Soji. The only other thing that really happens in this little scene is that you see that the box, once you've got it into the right configuration, just like in Hellraiser,
it opens.
It opens.
Yeah.
And it's got a little like ballerina figure in it. It looks like a music box.
How do they show that? Does someone open it? Does Narek open it?
Narek opens it.
He was playing with it. He's sort of doing the puzzle.
It's
and
a
then he
metaphor.
He's like, look, and he goes, look, and he shows it to her, and she's like, whatever. And then he goes, yeah, you never understood because you weren't patient.
Right.
And then he sits there and watches, and then you see it sort of opens on its own and reveals the little ballerina figure.
It's like you have to get it all in the right configuration, and then you have to be patient. It's a big, clunky metaphor. This is not a particularly well-written episode of this show.
No.
Unfortunately.
Nick Zayas.
No offense to Nick Zayas.
Go back to school. Go
not
back
to
writer
hear
school.
this.
Well,
I'm sure he was
doing
doing his best. I have, but just some of this stuff falls a little flat.
It was a little clunky.
Cut back to the ship. We're back on the La Sirena, and the gang is all on the bridge trying to figure out how are we going to get on to the Borg cube. The Borg cube is in Romulan occupied territory, which is off limits. And Captain Rios says to Picard, I'm not worried because I'm sure you have a plan for this. Picard's like,
recommendations.
Well, I'm kind of thinking. Picard's like, well, I'm working on it.
Don't really have a plan.
And Girardi's like, well, maybe we can pretend to be scientists because I'm a scientist. Picard's like, that won't work. Once they see me, he's like, I'll be recognized the second I leave. It's like if the Romulans don't recognize me, the Borg will, because I'm super famous, right? I can't go anywhere without getting yelled at or shot at by people. So they're like, well, what are we going to do? We got to
put the jingle in.
Everybody hates Jean-Luc Picard.
And he doesn't think that outfit that Teen used last time with Bejazel.
No, they can't bluff their way in this time.
He basically says, I think the best way to do it is
we need Starfleet. We need Starfleet diplomatic credentials, right?
There's a
It's
treaty
startling-
that says we can, if we go there as diplomatic papers, they have to let us on board.
Oh, that would
I'll
fall to
go
Raffi
there.
then.
Say that I want to talk to the director of the reclamation project, and they're like, well, what makes you think he's going to want to talk to you? And he's all, it's okay, I know him. And it's we all know that
we all know that that's Hugh that he's talking about, because we've seen Hugh up on the Borg ship before.
And so, but they're
They're
like,
like, Picard's like, well, they won't listen to me because I've already tried with them and they told me to go fuck off. So how are we going to get this diplomatic credential that we need? And they're like, well, let's go get Raffi.
Yeah, hack it.
So Raffi has been drunk this whole time since her ill-fated encounter with her son in the last episode. She's just been in her room drinking and getting high, which I think everybody can relate to that. So they drag her out of her room. They drag her out of her room. She's got a big old bottle of, brown liquor.
It looks like Jack Daniels, but some kind of brown.
It's that or
That's like 2/3
Johnny Walker or something, and she's she's like slugging out of the bottle. They shove her down in front of the console. She takes a big old puff off of her space vapor. She's like, if you want me to call Starfleet, then just leave me, get off my back. She's drunk as hell. She's like, so
this
then she calls
the best scene in the whole episode, I thought.
Oh, you think so? Okay.
Oh, I thought she was amazing at this.
I have one that I liked more, but I agree with you. I agree with you. She's terrific in this scene.
Yeah. She's so she calls an old friend of hers. We don't really know who she is, but they're clearly old friends. And then she just goes into girl mode. Like, it's amazing.
So they're just like talking like girlfriends back and forth.
Yeah. And she's
calling
like,
in a favor.
Look, I need to go. I've got Admiral Picard here. We need to go to the artifact. So I need you to send me some diplomatic papers, as old friends. And she's like, I can't do that. He's like, what? Really? You can't do that for me? Come on. What are, that kind of thing. And eventually she's like, okay, well, I just want you to know we're almost there. We're going to show up whether or not we've got the diplomatic papers or not. So, and if we show up there, everyone's going to know who Picard is. I'm pretty sure he's still up in the post office of Romulan headquarters, And so
she says he's still on the brochure for Starfleet.
And so she's like, and, technically if we show up, it's an act of war. But if you give us the diplomatic papers, we can sort of do what we got to do. And then we're out. Sort of basically blackmail.
Strong-armed, yeah.
She's like, we're almost here. And she's like, what do you mean? She's like, we're 3 hours away. Like, up until then, that conversation was like all hypothetical from the perspective of the Starfleet lady.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, you're there? Okay, that changes things a little bit. She's like, turn around. And they're like, no, not going to turn around. Raffi's like, Picard. He's an asshole. He never does what anybody tells him to do.
She says something about him being ego drenched in id or something.
Yeah. I forget the exact quote, but she's like, yeah, he's all ego and uncontrollable id or something like that. Yeah. And then they cut to Picard, and Picard gives her a look like, what the fuck are you even talking about? Like, if you know anything about Jean-Luc Picard, it's that he's not those two things. Like,
he's drinking tea right then.
Historically, he's a tea drinking, effete who like sits in his ready room and like cures the problems of the galaxy.
Wants the diplomatic approach.
Yeah, but she's like, him. He's a miserable asshole. So anyway, they trick this lady or connive this lady into giving them what they want. And the lady says, the last thing she says to Raffi before she signs off is, don't ever call me.
Do me a favor, don't ever call me again.
Yeah, which is sad because you get the impression that these two are friends.
Well,
and they cut to a shot of Raffi's face, and you can see that she's really
goes from
sad
sort
to
of
hear
happy
that.
to
Like,
sad.
Yeah. Well, but they've shown that Raffi is ready to sacrifice things that mean something in her life just to try and.
Well, I think that's where she's sort of realizing, like, that's the that's the path she chose, because she chose the path of Picard too. Like, that's why Picard is being hated by everybody, because he sort of sacrifices to do what's right at all times. He sort of sacrifices his relationships.
Yeah. Rafi continues to lose everything because of the choices that she's made. Wow. I mean, it doesn't help that she's an alcoholic drug addict, but it all goes back to the original choice to follow Picard and believe in the conspiracy and all of that. So she's lost another friend. You could also call this show Everybody Hates Rafi. Right. Jake, put the jingle in.
Everybody hates Rafi.
Oh, God. Another one.
More work for the producer. I love just adding work onto other people's lives. So, and then everybody clapped. They all clapped because she got them what they wanted. And she's like, don't clap. I don't want your fucking clapping. And then she kind of stumbles away, and she's so drunk she can barely walk.
Rios basically walks her to her room.
Helps her off the bridge back to her quarters.
Yep.
Wow, it's getting dark for Rafi there.
Yeah, I think Rafi's on a bit of a redemption, story. Picard is too. This whole thing, we said this before, but this whole show is about Picard and, I think by extension, Rafi sort of regaining their like
former
status, or not status isn't the right word, but like being proven right and being able to like show the rest of the Starfleet and the Federation that the path that they've been on for the last 14 years is not the right way to be.
Yeah.
Right.
And even though people hate them because they believe it's right, that they're going to be strong with it, and they're going to sort of like persevere through to the end, when hopefully people will see that they've been working for the better good.
Yeah, I mean, Rafi has run out of choices, right? Mm-hmm. Like, she went to Free Cloud to meet with her son, and her son rejected her. Yeah. So now she's got to sort of, fuck it, it doesn't really matter what happens. Yeah. Now.
Nothing to lose.
Vibe. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Back to the Borg cube. This episode, more than any other one, Borg. This episode does a lot of
bounced around a lot. Yeah, like, the scenes were not very long.
The scenes are very short, and they're constantly cross-cutting between what's happening on the Borg ship and what's happening on the La Sirena. So we're back to Narek and Soji.
Yep.
And Narek tells Soji, did you talk to your mom? And Soji's like, I tried, but about your weird dreams. And Soji's like, well, I tried, but I fell asleep. And he's like, that's interesting. Because you'll remember, men, we've seen her fall asleep talking to her mother before in an earlier episode. He's like, that's interesting. How often does that happen, where you fall asleep talking to your mom? And she's like, never. What do you mean? And he's like, well, I looked at the phone call records, and you call your mother every single day, and every single day each call lasts exactly 70 seconds and then it ends. And she's like, that can't be true. I talk to my mom, for minutes and minutes and minutes at a time. And he's like, nope, 70 seconds every call. I'll show you the records. And it's one of those scenes where it's like, we all know what's happening, but it's her putting another piece of the puzzle together kind of scene. And again, it's dramatically uninteresting because we already know what she's now learning. 80% of this episode was boring. 20% of it is really, really good. Back to La Sirena, Rafi and Rios. If Rafi and Rios got together, what would their portmanteau, what would their ship name be? What would their fanfic name be?
Riffos.
Riffos?
Riffles have ridges.
Riffos does have ridges, and they're called abdominal muscles. Back to the La Sirena.
Yeah.
Rafi and Rios are in Rafi's room. She's still drunk. We're right. We've just gone right back to where we just left. He's taken her to her quarters. He jumps her into bed, and she tells him the story of her son.
Yeah.
And she says, you and I have known each other a long, long time. And did you even know I had a son? And he's like, no, I didn't even know you had a son. She's like, well, that's, what does that say? That you can know somebody all this time, not know that they even have children. So she's drunk and feeling sorry for herself. That's the only thing that happens in that scene. It's super short. It's like 45 seconds maybe. And he's like, why don't you get some sleep? You're drunk. We'll talk again in the morning.
Yep.
Back to Borg ship.
Well, don't they have the scene where they find out how Picard's going to get there? Where
No, that's next.
Is that's after the scene with Soji?
Yeah, Soji talks to her mom. So Soji.
Well, right, okay.
Soji calls her mother, and now she's suspicious because Narek has told her the calls don't last more than 70 seconds. So she calls her mom, and she's like, "Mom, I've been meaning. I want to talk to you about this dream." And the mom's like, "You look tired. Why don't you take a nap?" And Soji starts to sort of like slump over and pass out. Then she grabs like a fork or something and like jabs herself in the head to like wake herself up. And then her mom starts glitching and keeps going, "Why don't you lay down and take a little?
You look tired. Why don't you lay down?
Why don't you lay down and take a little nap?" And eventually it works and she does pass out. But again, she's now put one more piece in place where she's figured out that like something's wrong with mom.
Now they go back to the Serena.
Yep.
And they talk about Picard, how they're not going to let them just dock on the ship, on the cube. He's only going to be able to be beamed aboard, and only him.
Oh. Only Picard.
Elnor's like, "I'll come with you." He's like, "No. I got to do this alone. You stay here. Do not leave this ship."
Elnor is like an eager puppy, right? He's chosen to join Picard, and so now he's like, I am going to go and protect you. And Picard's like, no, you have to stay here. I have to go by myself. He's like, I don't want to go by myself, but we don't have a choice.
Yeah.
He knows that Hugh is there.
And he's going to go talk to Hugh and hope that Hugh will help him get to Soji.
Okay.
That's the plan.
It's a good plan.
They then cut back to Soji, who's woken up from the sleep after passing out from talking to her mom.
Yeah.
She starts ransacking her room. And this is what I was talking about at the beginning of the show. She starts ransacking her room and scanning every item there. All these old pictures that she has, old, like, they look like, birthday cards and books and things that look like they were with her for years and years and years. And every time she scans it, it says age 37 months over and over again. And she's starting to go crazy. She's scanning everything. She finally, remember the necklace that Dodge had that had the two hoops?
Oh, yeah, the rings.
She gave to the two rings, and she gave it to Picard. Well, Soji has one too. She takes that off, scans it, 37 months, and she throws the scanner and breaks it against the wall. So
I have to refresh my beverage, you guys. Do you can keep talking while I'm away, but just know that I'm going to be away for 2.5 minutes or so.
Sure.
No
2.5 minutes. No, it won't be that long. It'll be like 55 seconds.
All right.
So she's
or you can talk about eating an Impossible Whopper.
Yeah.
If you want to talk about that for a minute.
I did. I ate an Impossible Whopper today.
Why don't you talk about that so that I don't miss any of the recap?
Anything good? Okay.
Talk about the Impossible Whopper. I'll be right back.
It was.
Where did you have it?
I got it at Burger King.
Burger
That's where
King.
you get the Impossible Whopper.
Okay.
It tasted like a Whopper.
Oh.
Which is to say, it just tasted like any other garbage fast food.
So nothing special, but you wouldn't turn it away. You wouldn't be like, "Oh, what the hell is this crap?"
I do it again. I did it because on twofold. It's Lent, so I gave up red meat for Lent, so I couldn't eat meat. But then it's also Friday, which means I can't eat chicken either. So
Why is that?
And you're only allowed to eat fish. Fish is the only meat you're allowed to eat on Fridays during Lent as a Catholic.
Okay.
Your options are limited at a Burger King if you can't eat red meat or chicken. So, do the Impossible Burger.
Yeah. And it was fine in your estimation. Fine. Yeah, nice. It's a little more expensive than a burger, isn't it?
I don't know. I mean, probably more expensive than the Whopper, but it was a typical fast food burger price. I think.
Sure.
I'm back. How long was I gone?
Not a minute, maybe. Yeah.
A minute.
I did also have the Impossible Burger myself as a vegetarian, and
you did? I was I was going to ask you.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to ask you if I brought you one next weekend when we do work, would you eat it like on mic so that we could get your like reaction?
Yeah, I've had it. It's fine. Yeah, there's nothing especially remarkable about it except that it's not bad. So I think that is a remarkable thing, actually, that it's not bad. So it's a very normal tasting burger. I wasn't like, oh, is this why does this taste like beans, or why is this?
It doesn't taste like dirt or anything.
Mm-hmm.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how much like actual beef is it?
6 for me.
6?
7.
Well,
where
did you have? Where did you have the Impossible burger?
I think they were also serving it at Carl's Jr. or Del Taco or something.
Carl's Jr. has an Impossible Burger now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like I said, to me, the Impossible Whopper, it just tasted like a Whopper.
Mm-hmm.
It was not a particularly good hamburger.
but like 10 out of 10 in terms of like
similar
texture.
To me, it tasted just like I couldn't tell the difference.
You could not distinguish the difference. So that's a 10 out of 10.
Yeah, to me, it was exactly like eating a Whopper.
Well, that's amazing. That genuinely
that's
is
pretty
impressive. I mean,
but that's generally because like a Whopper, like most of what you're tasting are the mayonnaise and the ketchup and the bun and the lettuce and the tomato. Like,
alternatively,
should we bring a bag of Impossible Whoppers?
I think so.
Next weekend.
I think so. I think that's a good plan.
We should all have one on mic and talk about the experience.
Are they going to sponsor us at some point? They better. They should.
I would love to be sponsored by Burger King. Are you?
Fuck that. Yeah, hell yeah.
Flame broiled. Best burgers on the planet.
I would bow down to the penis of Burger King.
I would bend the knee. I would bend the knee to the Burger King, as they'd say on Game of Thrones.
Yep.
Will you bend the knee to the Burger King?
Absolutely. Where's the money? Back up the truck.
Give me some money.
Well, it might be more like a little toy wagon of money.
I wouldn't even need
money. That's okay.
I would take
the amount of money from Burger King.
3 Burger King. I don't even need money.
Just a bag of delivered burgers.
Take like
$20.
One free burger a week or something like that.
One Whopper a week.
Oh, well, that does sound like a good
cheap.
deal.
I'm for sale and I'm cheap.
Yeah.
But I do have the AMC movies has the pass where you can do 3 movies. It's like I think it's like $24 a month or something like that, and you can see 3 movies a week.
Didn't you tweet about going to see?
So I have been
on IMAX.
I have been seeing a lot of movies lately. Yeah, I saw Parasite again yesterday on the IMAX, which was amazing. I love that so much. It was great. It was just as great the second time, knowing all of the sort of twists and turns of it as it was the first time. It's just
I'm gonna have to check it out. It sounds really cool.
By the way, I saw the Fantasy Island movie.
You did?
Yeah, because it's like I hope I can see 3 movies a week, and there aren't that many movies.
Sure, yeah, it's a rough time right now.
It's a remake, the Fantasy Island movie.
It's a horror. It's a horror movie. Somehow Blumhouse, which makes all of the Conjuring and Insidious. They make horror movies, right? Somehow they got the rights to the Fantasy Island IP, so they made a horror movie version of Fantasy Island, and I loved it. It has like 10% on Rotten Tomatoes. Like, it got the worst reviews of any movie ever. I had such a good time watching it. I was laughing. I was enjoying myself. I was eating popcorn. Like, I was just having a blast. It's dumb. It's so dumb.
Yeah, but what do you expect?
It's a hoot. I was
How
like,
much
how do you not like this dumb thing?
How much of Fantasy Island, the old Fantasy Island that we remember, do they bring forth to this new reincarnation? Is there a Mr. Rourke? Is there a tattoo?
There's a Mr. Rourke. There's a tattoo. There's a big. It's on an island. There's a big fancy white, mansion that they all are. They really they took all of the tropes of Fantasy Island and perverted them into a horror movie. Because the whole thing, Mr. Rourke's whole thing is that he tells them, we'll give you your fantasy, but you have to follow your fantasy through all the way to the end, no matter what. And it starts to go dark at a certain point. But I thought it was a hoot. It is not a good movie. I cannot in good conscience recommend it. But I had a lot of fun.
If you enjoyed it, then it's a good movie.
Yeah, sure. It's fun. I don't ever want to see it. I don't ever feel like I need to see it again.
That's right.
But I had a good time watching it. There was me and about 3 other people on like a Tuesday afternoon. You know what I mean?
Yep.
What about for that Parasite viewing? Was it crowded?
No, because I saw that yesterday afternoon.
Gotcha.
So not a lot of people go to the movies on a Wednesday afternoon or Thursday afternoon. And that was on the IMAX screen, which was, again, like sort of weird that they're even showing it on the IMAX screen. I'm sure they're doing it because it won Best Picture, and they're only doing one a day in that theater, and then they're showing, I don't know, Bad Boys 3 or something like that the rest of the day. But there was this one time a day where you can go and see Parasite on the IMAX screen. So I did. It's great. You both would love it.
Yeah. I mean, won Best Picture. It's supposed to be like, it's by a very famous director who's done some really amazing, interesting movies as well.
I love his movies. I love that guy's movies. And I almost feel like when you say something won Best Picture, it almost turns people off, because a lot of times the Best Picture winner is something that feels like boring or like a history lesson or it's about World War One. Like, this is not that at all. This is like a very modern, like
interesting.
Yeah, it's a delight to watch all the way through it.
I've seen some photos of the images, and they look really striking. Like the cinematography looks really modern and like sharp.
Yeah, it's beautiful. So it's most 90% of it takes place in this very fancy rich family's house. And apparently the house, he had such a specific vision of how he wanted to shoot the house and how he wanted to shoot the scenes in the house, and they couldn't find a house that met all of what they needed, all of the requirements they needed. So they built the house.
Wow.
In order to make the movie. Wow. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's something I read online.
Sure.
I would watch a 2-hour behind the scenes Parasite.
You should do a podcast about the movie itself. It sounds like you've got enough that you want to talk about it.
I would love to do a movie Parasite. A movie podcast. I would love to do a movie podcast, but we spend a lot of
the list
about Star Trek, so it's hard to find time to fit another podcast into our very busy schedules.
Yeah, tell me about it.
Yes, Picard beams to the Borg ship. He's all by himself, which I thought was weird. That no one was there to meet him.
Yeah, that
It
was odd.
felt like a writer's trick for the thing that's about to happen.
Oh.
Because they know he's coming.
Yeah.
And they've given him very specific coordinates. They say earlier up on the ship, they're like, beam to these specific coordinates. He does. No one is there. And again, this goes back to Picard sort of like confronting and dealing with his PTSD about having been Borgified. So he's like sort of like Patrick Stewart, I have to say, is brilliant in this episode.
Yeah.
He is a shining light in this episode because he acts the hell out of it. He's so uncomfortable and so traumatized about being back on a Borg ship. So he starts, no one's there to see him. He starts sort of walking down a walkway trying to find somebody. And he walks out onto this walkway that reminded me kind of Star Wars because there's no railings. And there's like a giant, there's like a giant pit beneath this walkway.
But no rails.
Moshe would have something to say.
I was like, where is the Borg HR department? Like, that's not safe. There's no railings on this walkway. And it's such a Star Trek trope that they're always on these walkways that have no railings at all. That I was just like, oh, this is a Borg Star Wars ship. Mm-hmm. And he starts to have these like he has basically a panic attack. And he starts having these flashbacks and he starts panicking and he's about to sort of fall over the side of this unrailed walkway. And a couple of Borg show up and they grab him. And he starts to freak out even more because there's Borgs. And then you hear Hugh saying, they're trying to stop you from falling over the edge.
You idiot.
You dumb old man. I added that last part.
Yeah.
And Picard sort of comes back to his senses and realizes that these are not Borg. These are
Deborg.
Deborg.
They're ex-Borgs.
Ex-Bs.
And so he sees Hugh, and for the first time, somebody from Picard's past is happy to see
other than the
warrior nuns.
This is the first Hugh, and Hugh tells him, "I don't know why you're here, but I'll help you do whatever you need to get done."
And it was really a lovely scene.
Yeah.
I was so it made my little sad piece of coal of a heart like grow 3 sizes because it was so sweet, and they were so happy to see each other, and they have such a long history with each other, and
you said it's the same actor from before.
Yep, it's the same actor who played Hugh in the original show. It was a great little moment of them sort of reconnecting.
Yeah.
And then Hugh's like, "What are you doing here?" Like, they told me you were coming, but I didn't really believe it. And now here you are. Why are you here? And he's like, "I'm looking for this girl. She's a scientist. She may be in trouble." And Hugh's like, "You're talking about Soji, right?" And he's like, "How do you know that?" And he's like, "Well, something weird's been going on with her ever since hot piece of ass Romulan started skulking around asking questions." So Hugh
pretending not to know who she is.
Right.
That's what he says.
Hugh's like, "I thought there was something going on with her." Picard's like, "I really need to find her. Can you help me find her?" Hugh's like, "Yeah, let's go." And off they go.
That's where the scene where I mentioned before, he talks about, I forget that most people forget that Borg aren't monsters, they're victims. Like,
that doesn't happen in that scene. That happens.
That's where that happens. Yes, it is.
No, it's later when they're in the med lab.
He talks about that before he talks about Soji.
No, you're absolutely wrong. He tells him, "I need to see Soji," and then they go to the med lab because that's where Soji is supposed to be working. And then Hugh's like, "Well, she didn't check in today. Let's go to her quarters." But while they're in the med lab, they have that whole conversation about what are you doing? Picard's like, what are you doing here? And he's like, we're deborging the Borgs. And that's when Picard says, you're helping people to see that they're victims, not monsters.
Yeah. Okay. Fine.
Way to fight for what's right, Matt.
Extension of the scene.
I took detailed notes.
He came prepared.
I have the receipts.
All right. So then what happens?
Soji and Narek. Soji is.
They have their little about
Soji and Narek,
the Zomwat. Isn't that what he calls it?
She's in her quarters, and she's freaking out. And she's like, "I scanned all of the pictures. They all say it's only been 37 months." He's like, "Have you ever thought about the fact that maybe your memories are implanted and that somebody's trying to hide something from you?" She's like, "Well, fuck, no, that has not ever occurred to me before," even though it clearly should have, given everything that happened to her so far. Yeah. He's like, I may know a way to help you. There's this Romulan meditation thing. And she's like, oh, yeah, I've heard of that. I forget what it's called, Shawn. Did you write down what it was called?
Zomwat is what I heard.
Close enough.
I'm pretty sure that's what they said. I wasn't watching it with the closed captions, so I couldn't read it. I just heard it.
I watch everything with the closed captions on now. That's how you know how old I've become.
Yeah, I generally do, but I was home alone and I could turn it up as loud as I wanted to, so I was able to watch. I like to turn them off if I can really hear it good, because I like you say, I'll end up just reading it instead of watching the show if they're up there. So
yeah, I like having the closed captions on.
I've got very used to it because I do it most of the time. Like 90% of my television viewing is with the closed captioning on.
And I don't even have the excuse of I don't want to wake up the kids or whatever, which
you just like it.
Which I'm assuming is your excuse. My excuse is a very old man excuse, which is the commercials are so loud, but the dialogue is so quiet. Like, I don't know, I can't get the balance right on my television computer. It's just like, if I turn the captions on, I don't have to think about it. Min, how do you watch things? Do you watch with the?
I wish I could watch things like we do at the Warp Studio on projector, like huge, on my laptop. I like to make my fonts big. So yeah, we're in the old person, like, make it bigger, turn it up.
So you watch shows and movies with the caption?
No, not really. I don't like captions. They distract me. That's all I can watch then.
Don't. Yeah, so I'm the only one. Okay. Yeah. If I'm watching an old movie where everybody's like speaking very, if I'm watching Cary Grant and Rosalind Russell or somebody like that, where everybody had very like crisp diction and there was no confusion about what they were saying, then I don't need the captions. But modern day acting is so like mumbly and like quiet that a lot of the time I'm like, I don't know what they're saying.
The show that I started me watching with closed captioning was Elementary, the Sherlock Holmes show with Johnny Lee Miller.
And
he is fucking impossible to understand on that show. He talks in a very monotone and it's very low, and then you top that with the English accent. It was like impossible. Even no matter how loud I would put the TV, I could not understand what he was saying. And we were constantly rewinding. What did he say? So finally, we're like, just put on the closed captions. We'll read it.
That's such a good show. I really enjoyed it.
I never watched.
Like, there's about 8 episodes that me and Kat, we never finished it. We haven't finished. We gotta watch it. Fortunately, we now have the great CBS All Access channel, and they are on there.
You never finished one? That is unlike you.
Well, I'll tell you what happened. For some, AT&T and Viacom had like a spat, and CBS was like,
for a while we couldn't get Channel 2.
I couldn't get Channel 2, and so we right in the middle of the season, and so that's not a show that like they show reruns all the time. And it wasn't on, and so we couldn't watch it. There was no way for us to watch it. So there's like 5 or 6 episodes to the series finale that we haven't watched.
That is a very good explanation
Makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Back to the show we're supposed to be talking about. Picard.
So anyway, cut to Hugh and Picard in the med lab. And Picard's like, what is this place? And Hugh's like, this is where we help the ex-Borgs recover their lost humanity. So they're like taking the pieces off of them and like healing them, basically. And Picard's like, this is amazing. I had no idea that it was even possible to do this on such a large scale. And he's like, Hugh, you must be. It's a wonderful scene. Again, these two characters have such a history with each other. And Picard is like, Hugh, what you're doing here is absolutely unbelievable. I'm so proud of you. And Hugh's like, well, the reason I'm showing you this is that I hope that someday you can go back and become an advocate for the recovered Borg, because we have nowhere to go. He's like, look, we went from being Borg to being captives of the Romulans. So we don't have a home. We don't have a place to go. We're living on this Borg ship. Wouldn't it be wonderful if Jean-Luc Picard, of all people, a former Borg,
stick up for us,
would become somebody who would stick up for the XBs? And you can tell that Picard's like moved by that. And he's like, you're right. What you're showing people is that they're victims, not monsters. That's where that moment happens, Shawn.
Yes. Okay. We got to that moment. Moving on.
Ruffian Rios back on La Serena. Why don't you tackle this one?
Yeah,
I don't remember what I remember. That they have I don't remember.
Oh, wow.
My notes are a little sketchy at this point in time.
Damn you, Shawn! You had one job.
Okay. So they start talking. Okay,
he brings her coffee. She wakes up. She's hungover.
It's interesting. They figure out that Soji's on this cube with the Romulans. They went and they killed Daj. Why are they keeping her alive?
Right. Why is Soji still alive?
Rafi goes into, wait a minute. There's a reason why they're keeping her alive. I got to figure out what that is.
Yep. They do that shot where it's sort of a medium close up on a person's face where they like put their eyes upwards and go, huh? Like I've just had a thought that will probably
figure something
pay off narratively later on down the line. Back to the Borg, and this is the most boring scene in this whole episode. It's so boring.
Narek and Soji doing the Zamwat.
Yeah.
In the special, for some reason, the Romulans have created a sort of, I don't know, chapel in the middle of this Borg cube so they can do their little Zamwat meditation practices. And he takes her in there. And he's walking her. She's got to walk this weird path that's like painted on the ground. She's figuring out her dream, and she's seeing the dream, and she's like, well, look out the window. He tells her to look out the window. She says, I can't. He goes, you got to realize this is your dream. You can control it.
Mean Romulan sister.
She does. And
mean Romulan sister is watching all of this happen. We see her like
being broadcast to the main headquarters of the Romulans.
I just wrote boring in big capital letters during this whole scene.
So she's seeing the same dream we watched at the beginning, but now she has a little more control. She looks out the window. She can't really see anything. It's just raining a lot. There's a lot of storm. She walks into the lab, and then she hears Soji, so she breaks out of it again. She's like, I can't, every time my dad yells at me, I break out. And he goes, well, can you think you can do it if he, focus and you can get through that, and he'll yell at you, but you keep going. So then she goes back into her dream, and she's going into the lab, and he yells at her, but she doesn't stop. She doesn't wake up. She starts looking around. She sees her father walking towards her, but he doesn't really have a face. He's like
his
that
face
guy.
His face is all blurry.
He has a face, but you can't remember what his face looks
Oh yeah, he looks like the faceless man from the
Cthulhu game. Perfect.
Yeah. And then he says, "Look up." And she looks up out of there's like a skylight in the room, and she looks up and she sees 2 moons and a lot of thunder and lightning. And so then that's the what they wanted. So Rizzo says, "Computer, find me a planet with 2 dark moons and a lot of electrical storms." And Nerek's like, "Hey, look, you made it to the end. Good for you. You figured out what you need. You're a robot, and I'm gonna kill you now." Walks out of the room.
Wait, there's another scene in there. They cut away from that at one point.
Oh, they go to the room to
Picard and while Soji is having her like memory exposition dump, Picard and Hugh go to Soji's quarters because they've gone to the med lab and she wasn't there. So they go to her quarters. And all of the pictures that she was looking at earlier are all scattered all over the place. It looks like it's been ransacked because she freaked out earlier. And Hugh's like, "What the hell happened in here?" And Picard like looks at the pictures and he's like, I think she's about to figure out who she really is.
Yeah.
And Hugh's like, "What do you mean? Who is she?" Because Picard has not explained anything to Hugh at this point. He's just like, "I need to find this girl.
Just like,
I can't
you need,
tell you what.
You want to find Soji? I'll take you to her."
And Picard's like, "I don't have time to explain. It's a long story. You'd have to watch 5 episodes of television to really understand it. So just get me.
You need to find her right now."
Right. And they can't find her.
He goes
because she's in this Romulan like meditation room, which doesn't show up on their scanners. So Hugh pulls up his scanner and he's like, "The computer says she's not on the ship, but that can't be true." Picard's like, "Somebody's hiding her. So what are we going to do?" And then they cut back to the meditation room.
And Narek basically leaves the room, and he leaves the little box in the room with her.
Box. Mm-hmm.
And then he shuts the door, and it opens, and all this red gas starts flowing into the room, and she starts like screaming and choking, and he's just sort of watching her. She's gonna die. She then just starts to. Is there another scene, or does this one she starts to just
this is it.
Out of the ground?
He tells her, "You're a robot, and now I'm gonna kill you." And then he like runs out the door before she can get away.
Locks her in,
and then the little box.
It's radiation.
Yeah.
She starts banging on the ground. Just starts. She sort of now she kind of activates a little bit. She starts pounding on the ground and she breaks through the floor.
Literally like hulks out and like
rips open a hole in the floor. And then looks out the window and jumps down the hole.
Yeah.
So now all of a sudden, blam, she shows up on the scanner that Hugh and Picard are looking at. They're like, "Well, wait a minute, this doesn't make any sense. She's moving way too fast." And Picard's like, "Well, okay, she's activated.
That's her.
That's her. Let's go get her. Where is she? We got to go get her now." So they take off. Of course, the Romulans are taking off after her because Rizzo has heard all of this too. She knows that she's now. So the Romulan guards are going after her.
Everyone's chasing Soji.
They all chase her. They get to her. Picard and Hugh get to her first. Picard's like, "Look, I know you're freaking out. My name is Jean-Luc Picard. I know your sister Daj came to me on Earth, and I'm here to help you." She sort of looks at him. He's like, "Trust me. We got to go. We got to go now." He
shows her the necklace, and he's like, "Your sister gave me this necklace, and I tried to help her, but she died. But I came here to help you. You have to trust me. We have to get out of here right now." She's like, "Do you know who I am?" And he's like, "I know exactly who you are, and I can explain, but we don't have time to talk about it right now because now is time for running. Like, let's run." and then they run.
Hugh takes them to some secret place.
They can't beam because they only got special permission to beam Picard down.
Right.
So,
So they're running to Hugh takes them to some secret place that the Romulans apparently don't know about.
Rafi's up on the ship, and Rafi's got like, oh no, things have gone bad down there.
Yeah,
and then they cut to a shot of Elnor, because remember Picard told Elnor, don't come down here after me.
Don't come on.
But
don't leave the ship.
Shot of Elnor sort of like looking off into the distance,
and you're like, oh, he's gonna go kick some ass.
He's not gonna follow Picard's rules this time, I don't think.
Yeah, nope.
So far, he has not followed any of Picard's rules.
Heads are gonna roll.
Cut back to them in there, and Hugh's like, "This is some gobbledygook. I don't remember, but essentially, it's a transporter, but they can transport light years away.
It's the Queen cell. They run into this room, and Picard's like, "This is the Queen's cell, right? Remember the Borg Queen men from Star Trek?
Transport her consciousness.
First Contact. Remember the Borg Queen?
So this is where the Queen would always be on any of the Borg cubes.
And Picard's like, how do I remember this? I've never even been here before. And he's like, that's just how it works. We all remember. It's all just...
I've never met this. I've never been here before either, and I remember her.
And then there's some classic Star Trek techno babble where Hugh's like, I have this magic transporter that will beam you.
We didn't have it
wherever you want to go.
We assimilated this technology from these people that was later, blah blah blah. And it basically, essentially, it's a transporter that can transport people light years away.
Classic Star Trek nonsense.
Well, Star Trek is built on some nonsense.
Until I hear you acknowledge what I'm saying.
Yes, I said it at the beginning. It was gobbledygook. I called it that from the get-go.
It's technobabble is the preferred term.
Yes. Anyways, he calls the La Sirena. He says, "Meet me. I can't beam over, but meet me at this." And he gives them some planet name.
Nepenthe.
Is that right?
It's Nepenthe.
What is it?
Nepenthe.
Nepenthe.
Which is also the title of next week's episode. So,
and they're like, "What are you talking about?" He's all, "I don't have time. Just go there." And then they're waiting, and the Romulans are getting close. And then Rios is like, "Okay, well, this is where we're going." And then he goes, "Wait, where's the kid?" They realize on this La Sirena that Elnor is not in the bridge anymore. Cut to, there's Elnor.
Yeah, a bunch of Romulans come running in, and they're like, "Stick them up." And then Elnor beams in like right behind them, and then there's a lot of chopping off of the heads.
Oh my God!
There's a lot of head chopping off that happens.
A lot of head chopping off.
And Picard's like, "I told you not to chop off anybody's head anymore." And Elnor's like, "Yeah, I ignored you.
Stay on the ship."
But I saved your life
here.
And then Picard's like, "Okay, thank you. You're welcome. Yeah, that's fine." And I'm going to give you another.
We're going through.
This is your second free pass. You already got one.
No more killing, though. After this, no more killing.
But we're going to give you one more free pass about this. So then he's like, "Okay, let's all jump through the magic transporter and go to see Commander Riker." And then, and then Elnor's like, "I'm going to stay here.
Says, nope.
Fight them off to keep them from, so that you guys can get away."
They can't
Which did not make any sense at all, because why couldn't all three of them just jump through that thing and go to the thing? It was very unclear.
I don't. Yeah, it didn't make sense, because it seemed like they could just shut it down afterwards. But
right, and Picard's like, "You have to come with me." Like, Elnor's like, "Nope, I'm gonna stay here," and I'm gonna stay here.
It may have been clunky, but it led to a great moment. Right, the last moment of the show is pretty cool.
It is.
So they jump through, and Hugh and Elnor are there.
Yeah, just Picard and Soji go through.
Soji and Picard. So Elnor and Hugh are there
stay behind to fight the Romulans, and Hugh stays behind to shut down the transporter.
Gotcha.
It's like it's going to take
how much
5
time do you need
for me to shut this thing down?
Can you hold him off? He's like, "I think so." They're sort of standing in the hallway. He's got his sword tray up, and then the screen goes black, and you hear Elnor say something along the line. Maybe you wrote it down. He says something along the lines of, "You guys have one chance to put down your weapons," or something along those lines.
He says the exact same thing he said when he fought the Romulan dude
when he cut
on
the Romulan off
Vashti.
Vashti.
What he says is, "Please, friends, choose to live."
That's it. Yep.
And then that's the
awesome.
end of the
That was the end of the show.
Wow.
And as Matt said in the coming later, it looks like we're going to where Commander Riker is.
On Nepenthe.
In the previews for next week, we see that Picard has gone to the planet where Riker and Troy apparently are living.
Yep.
Riker and Deanna Troy.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
No, Luxana Troy.
I don't know. Did they get married?
Yeah, they get married in one of the movies.
In Nemesis, they get married.
Okay.
Married.
That's cool. That is so cool. Well, it seems like it was pretty action packed at the end there.
It was the last 10 minutes and all the stuff with Picard and Hugh, which is maybe another 10 minutes, was great. The rest of the episode was kind of a drag.
Was clunky, yeah. It was just a lot of exposition dump, but it was exposition that we already know. It was like exposition for a character in the show. So it's like, who cares?
And we're going to get a bunch of it again next week because he still has to tell her the whole backstory, which is they're going to make you watch instead of instead of just saying like, while we were beaming to Nepenthe, I explained it to her, and now she's all caught up. They're going to make us watch that whole thing again.
Well, do you think that they're trying to do that to help the viewers who might not be following along? It's like the lowest common denominator. They want to make sure like everyone is clear on what's happening. I mean, or you think it's just too much?
First of all, there's nobody who's just following along. You have to pay to watch CBS.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Nobody's just gonna randomly stumble across episode 6 of Star Trek Picard because that's not how streaming works.
You make a lot of sense.
Yeah. So I think it's just clunky storytelling and just sort of lazy writing. I like this show, but I think it could be tighter. You know what I mean? There's been a lot of wheel spinning. It took 3 episodes for him to get off Earth. You know, like
Well, you said it was being helmed by Michael Chabon and Alex Kurtzman.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So Chabon is normally a literary novelist.
Yes.
Yeah. So he may be.
And Kurtzman comes from the J.J. Abrams school of television,
drag it out,
which is like
drag it out. Man.
Let's try to show you every minutia of people's story, and it's like sometimes it can be excruciating.
Yeah.
Sometimes it works really well.
There is a version of this that's probably almost as good. I mean, we'll wait until the end and see, but I'm guessing they could have told this same 10-hour story in 5 hours.
Half the time, yeah.
I think they maybe didn't have enough story to fill 10 episodes because a lot of it feels like filler to me.
Yeah. Agreed.
I would say B. I would give this episode a B.
But look, it's
last
TV,
episode,
so not every episode.
Last episode, I would give it. The last 2, I would give an A.
That's what I wanted to do.
This episode, I would give a B.
You guys should give IMDb ratings, future IMDb ratings for these episodes.
There are current IMDb.
Oh, are there? Wow. Ooh, wow.
IMDb operates in real time, man.
Wow.
Go on there and vote for whatever you want.
When we watch episodes for Warped, 20 years from now, I'll tell you what the IMDb rating is of the episode. we can ask Aaron to guess.
You assume that we'll be alive. You assume that IMDb will still exist. You assume that the planet will still exist.
Let's deal with one day at a time. One day.
Hey, everybody, go out and
I
vote.
gotta live my life like everything's gonna be the same tomorrow as it is today. You know.
Shall we wrap this up, gentlemen?
Yeah. Wow. What an
Yeah.
hour.
It's been an hour and a half, if not more.
It's been almost 2 hours.
For a 55-minute television show.
This is just they're getting longer and longer, these episodes.
We thought these would be short.
But if you enjoy listening
Somehow
to
these
us talking,
are longer than
longer than
warped
Warped.
episodes.
How is it possible that these are longer than? Because Aaron wouldn't put up with it. Aaron wouldn't allow 2 hours on one
you would
episode.
just sleep through it.
You always have to pee. How is it possible you've been on the line for 2 hours and you don't have to
I've
pee?
been holding it. I also wanted
He's
to
got
run off
He's
and
got a tube connected to his dick that runs.
Are you wearing a catheter? Is that what's going on now?
just adult diapers.
When he's at the computer store, he's got a hookup that just so he can just sit at the desk all day.
To
and
USB-C
he just
cord.
plugs in.
Plugs right in.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, thank you all for listening, everybody, and join us again next week for Inside Picard Episode 7, Nepenthe, where we will meet. It seems like we're going to meet Commander Riker and Counselor George.
And we're going to see Commander Riker. And that'll be fun.
They
Forward to
have a
that.
kid.
Commander Riker looking pretty old.
Until then, please rate, review, and subscribe. Warped the podcast on all your podcatching devices. You can follow us on Instagram at Warped the Podcast, on Twitter at Warped Trek. You can follow me at Host Warped. You can give us money at patreon.com/warped, where you can get bonus content and extra episodes and cool things like that. You can follow Min at Wet Maynard. You can listen to our D&D live play podcast.
Strato Mojado.
No, I knew what it was
Mojado.
called. Do you search for Strato Mojado or do you search for Wet Maynard
Strato
on
Mojado.
podcasting?
Strato Mojado.
STRAHDOMOJADO. Did I spell that right?
Yes, you did.
Ah, I'm impressed.
Yes.
That was good job.
It's hard.
Until
Well
then,
done.
thank you very much for listening. My name is Matt.
I'm Shawn.
And I'm Min Win.